breakfast and class graciously sponsored לעילוי נשמת מסעוד Prosper Asher Ben Denise Tihye by his dear son here present Yoshua Peretz and family לעילוי נשמת his beloved father. Additionally, today's class sponsored by the Baghdadi Kohanim family לעילוי נשמת שלמה הכהן בגדדי בן סטי and Luisa Leah Bat Sara עליהם השלום. יהי רצון that to the words of Torah and Berachot the Neshamot have an aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. Today being Erev Shabbat Kodesh, and as we announced inside, this is a major Shabbat, not only Shabbat Kodesh, Shabbat Nahamu, Perashah Ba'et Hanan, the Ten Commandments, Shema Israel, also found in the Perashah of today. So Baruch Hashem, and on top of that is also Tu B'Av. So we have a major Shabbat coming up today on the 14th day of Menachem Av. Since we discussed for the majority of this week about Shabbat Nahamu and Tu B'Av, today I think is important to discuss some ideas of Perashah Ba'et Hanan. As we know, Perashah Ba'et Hanan, besides the Aseret HaDiberot, it contains the Shema Israel. So we'll discuss a couple of small ideas about this mega Shabbat and the Kedusha of the Shema Israel. So Be'ezat Hashem, enjoy the delicious Seudah. If for some reason you ran out of sambusak on that table, to my left you have a whole tray that is Baruch Hashem full, and feel free to take. Do not worry about me. I'll do the talking, you do the eating and the listening. So let's discuss a couple of messages from the beautiful Sefer that's called Pelaot Edotecha. Now, I'm going to be quoting from different sources. We begin with the great Hagra on the commentary on the book of Shlomo HaMelech Mishle. Shema. The meaning of the word Shema means what? To listen. Hazak. Also Shema means also to understand. Not only to listen, because listening is not enough. We have to understand as well. If you look at the word Shema, that gives us a hint on the prayers of every day. The Shin for Shaharit, the Mem for Mincha, and the Ain for Arbit. So here we get a hint of our connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu through the power of prayer. Comes the Gaon of Vilna and it says, how many words the Shema contains? The three Perashiot of Shema. How many words? You want to guess?
245.
Okay, close enough. I want the real answer. You're almost there. 248.
That's what the extra.
Okay, that's why I said I need the real answer. Because there's a difference between 245 and 248. And thank you. So comes the Gaon of Vilna and it says that the Shema, every word of the Shema connects to a different bone of the human body. This is a known fact. It's not a Hidush. The Shulchan Aruch brings it down and it says, the Gaon of Vilna, Bechol Teva Refu'a La'ever. Every word of Shema can bring healing to a particular bone, Av she'eno yodea hakavana. If you ask me, Rabbi, what word connects to this word, to this part of the body, I'm not sure that I'm able to give you a true answer. I can guess. If you tell me something with the ear, I will tell you, oh, ear, Shema. For example, heart, lebabecha. Eyes, ainecha. Hands, yadecha. Legs, ublechtecha. So there are key words, and these words that I just mentioned without giving you the explanation talks about different parts of the body. The ear, the eye, the hand, the leg, the heart of the person. But there are many more parts of the body. And the Gemara goes even further in Masechet Berachot. I'm going to say something strong, but do not worry. Put on the bulletproof vest and nothing will happen to you. So the Gemara writes in Berachot, Kol HaKoreh Kriyat Shema. A person who reads Faddal, a person who reads Shema, Umedakdek Beotioteha, and makes the effort of pronouncing properly the Shema. Metzanenim lo Gehinam. In English it means they turn on the air conditioning in Gehinam. After 120 years, the person is given a tour. Or eventually, every neshama, I like to believe, I would like to say most neshamot, go to Gan Eden. Sooner or later, they go to Gan Eden. But you know, they give you also a free tour of the opposite of Gan Eden. Gan Eden is a place of holiness, a place of sanctity, a place of kedusha, a place that a person can feel and says the Shekhinah. And Gehinam is where the neshama goes through a tikkun. So the Gemara writes, they cool off the Gehinam for this person that said Shema properly during their lifetime. And I'm sure that many of us have questions. What does it mean that turn on the air conditioning of the Gehinam? Since when the Gehinam has air conditioning? Depends on the Gehinam that a person goes. You have Gehinam of fire, you have Gehinam of ice, and you have Gehinam of something that I cannot say publicly, especially when everybody's eating. So take my word for it. Even though we don't really understand, it's all spiritual. Has nothing to do with the physicality of life, but has to do with the spirit. What does it mean to say Shema properly? So, Shema properly literally means to read the Shema properly. Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, word by word. That's why the Halakha says that when you read the Shema, there are words that you need to be meticulous of not putting it together. Because if you put them together by sharing, right, the last letter of one word and the first letter of the next word, which happen to be the same letter, for example, al lebabecha. If you say it fast, al lebabecha, so it's one word out of two. So it means you're missing one body part. Has v'shalom. So when you have letters that the word finishes with a lamed, and the next word is coming, and the next word, it begins with a similar letter, make sure to make an interruption. Al levabecha, al levabchem. For example, another one that the letters are different, but it changes the meaning of the Tefilah. For example, in the second paragraph, we say, Vesamtem et devarai elle. That means you will place these words on your heart. That is from next week's Torah portion. Now, what happens if I say, Vesamtem met? Met. So suddenly I introduce death, God forbid, on a verse that doesn't speak about death. But because I was not makpid, I was not meticulous in separating. So I'll tell you a secret. Reading Tefilah fast is not considered a great accomplishment. And I'm sorry to be so blunt. We don't measure the quality of a Hazan by how fast they pray. Because praying too fast is not good. Now that you understand that the Shema needs to be pronounced good, and I did not even get to the ta'amim of the Shema, which in the men's department is something required as well. So when Hazanim step up to the plate, and I see many junior Hazanim in the audience, make sure to read the Shema with ta'amim. If it takes you an extra minute, it's worth it, because every word is like diamond. Another word in the halakha of Shema, to pronounce the letters properly. Aleph is Aleph, He is He, Ain is Ain. But if you say Ain Aleph, that's a halachic problem. For example, Ul'obdo bechol levabchem. What does it mean? That verse of the Torah. Ul-obdo means what? To serve God with your heart. And instead of me saying ul-obdo with ayin, I will say ul-obdo with aleph. What does it mean? To lose God. To lose God. God forbid. Of abedah, lashon, lost. Another one. The Lacha writes at the end, Lema'an tizkeru. The Lacha says, pronounce the zayin. What does it mean to the younger audience, not to the adults that say Shema for 50 years, the young kids that just became bar mitzvah or below bar mitzvah? What does it mean? Tizkeru. What's the root? To remember. Hazaku baruch. But what will be the meaning if I say Lema'an tizkeru? With a sin or with a samir? Huh? Tizkeru is to close God. Or if you say with a shin, tishkeru means God got drunk. Or if you say with a sin, means to hire. Tishkeru means of lost. No, lost, that was the other one. Tishkeru means to get drunk. Tishkeru. Tishkeru means to what? What did you say before? To close with a samech, and with the sin means to get drunk or to hire. So which one is it? You want to hire God? You want to make God drunk? Or you want to remember God? You want to remember. But in order for that to happen, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to pronounce the word tiz, not tis, tiz. Although in Arabic that word is not a nice word, for those who understand. Okay? Okay, don't worry. If you don't know the information, better for you. But I use this, and I apologize to the wonderful audience of iTorah.com and everybody here, but we know what it means. Tizkeru, to remember. Okay? And I'm sure that if we scrutinize the Shema, we're going to find additional examples that the lack of proper pronunciation changes the meaning of the word, and then it changes the whole idea of the Shema. So the question is as follows. Why the Gemara says that the temperature of Gehinnom will be lowered in honor of this person who says Shema? So it says the Bet Yosef in the name of the Mahari. Listen to the reason. שמאחר שהוא מעורר עצמו בזה ומניע חום טבעי לדקדק באותיותיה, בשכר זה החום הטבעי מצלני לו חום אחר שהוא בגיהינום. Translation, 1 second. If a person reads the Shema lakemomi, what does it mean? You read the Shema, okay? Did you show any feelings, any emotions, any proper pronunciation, any excitement when you read the Shema? Zero. Zero. Nothing. So it says the Maram Bet Yosef that the effort that the body invests in the pronunciation of the words and in the meticulous reading of the Shema, it's like you pay your bill to society, and because of the warmth that you cause to your body now, you don't have to worry about the temperature in Gehinnom after 120 years. But I need to issue a disclaimer that this is only on the mitzvah of Shema. There are other reasons, God forbid, connected to the concept of a judgment after 120 years. I'd like to go further on the topic of Kriyat Shema, quoting the Gemara in, I have the notes from before, Gemara in Masechet Sotah, I believe. You know, Gemara Masechet Sotah. You remember the story in the book of Shmuel. Shmuel HaNavi. In his lifetime, there were two kings of Israel, Shaul and David. During their kingdom, there was a common enemy for the Jewish people. That was, no, Pelishtim. Pelishtim was the main enemy of Am Israel. Amalek was in the early days of Shaul HaMelech. But in the time of Shaul and David, you remember who David HaMelech needed to defeat? The Pelishtim. But what was the warrior of the Pelishtim? Goliath. Now, who was Goliath? You remember him, right? Goliath was the giant. Just to give you a less than a minute introduction, he was the son of Orpah, the famous Orpah, the sister of Ruth, that we discussed in the beginning of Megillat Ruth, how these two sisters were married to Machlon and Chilion, the sons of Elimelech and Naomi. Ruth continued on the journey to Israel and eventually married Boaz, the famous story, but Orpah didn't go all the way to Israel. She walked 40 steps. It's important to know these details because it's connected to the Shema. She walked 40 steps to escort Naomi to the boundaries of the city, so to speak. She came back, and that night she became pregnant. From that pregnancy, Goliath was born. And everybody knows this. Goliath was a giant, an enemy of the Jewish people. The Gemara tells us in Masechet Sotah, and you can see this in Shmuel Aleph. The Pasuk says, Hashkem beha'arev. Goliath, Mehila. There was a treaty made back then that nations were tired of going to war and having to have dead people, dead soldiers, widows and orphans. You know what agreement they made? They made an agreement that each nation will send a representative to the battlefield. And whoever wins the match, that will be considered the winner of the war, and the winning nation will take over the losing nation. It sounds like a good deal, I believe, right? Less casualties, less widows, less orphans. But Shaul HaMelech had difficulty in appointing or having a volunteer who is going to go out and fight against the giant Goliath of the Pelishtim. For the Goliath, for the Pelishtim nation, was no-brainer. He was a mega giant above the normalcy of height and strength. Okay? And now Shaul says, whoever defeats Goliath will marry my daughter. The Gemara criticizes Shaul. How can you make such a loose statement? What if an Eved or if a Goy says, you know what? If I'm going to get the princess of Israel as a wife, I'm going to go to war. And the Gemara says, Shelosha dibru shelo kehogen. There were three people who said something inappropriate. One was Shaul. Shaul made a huge mistake when he said, when he said, whoever defeats Goliath. What if, God forbid, an Eved or a Goy defeats Goliath? Another one was Iftah. Remember, Iftah was also a strong man from Israel. And when he went to fight the war against the Pelishtim, thank you, what does he say? Whoever comes out to greet me, I will offer as a korban to Hashem. And the question is asked, what if a dog came out to greet him? Are you going to offer a dog to Hashem? Lo tavi etnan zona umhir kelev is a Torah prohibition. You know what was the end of the story? A very unhappy ending. His daughter came out to greet him. And you know what happened with her? Her life came to an end. She remained alive in the attic of the home. And every day they will send food for her. And the friends will come to visit them from the ground. She was in isolation, no 14 days quarantine, I believe for the rest of her life. And the Talmud says, both of them spoke in a way that is inappropriate. When you wish something, right? Sometimes people wish, right? Make sure to think before you're wishing. Because God forbid you wish something that is, the Gemara talks a third case, a husband that the wife is pregnant on the 8th month of pregnancy. And he says, oh, I wish the wife gives birth in the next few days so we can go on vacation later. Guess what? For a wife to give birth during the 8th month of pregnancy is sakana nefashot. It's dangerous. You know why it's dangerous? Because the baby is not complete yet. It's an incomplete creation. There is a transition in pregnancy. In the 3rd trimester is the final touch to the human body. So Shaul was protected from heaven. Who became his son-in-law? David, not an issue. Iftah lost a daughter. And there is a mahloket why he didn't do a tarat nedarim that we're going to do tomorrow night after Avdalah. If you're in the neighborhood, make sure to come to make a tarat nedarim. We'll do another one later on in the week if necessary, Be'ezat Hashem, to accommodate the needs of the Kahal. But if you look in the book of Shmuel, I'm going to come back to the Shema. 1 second, please. What do we see? That Goliath will come out twice a day to utter blasphemies. To curse God. He will challenge God. He will challenge the Jewish people. What, no one can fight against me? Is your God so weak that there is no volunteer? And when David came to visit his brothers that day, and he heard what kind of vocabulary Goliath was using, he became very upset. How come nobody's doing anything? Yani, there is a siddur on the floor, or a chumash on the floor, everybody's walking by it, and nobody's picking it up. Does it make sense to you? So we know the happy ending of the story. Comes the Gemara in Masechet Sotan, asks, what time did Goliath will come out to curse Hashem? Short answer, like he said so beautifully, at the moment of Shema, in the morning and in the evening. He will utter words, he will scream, he will yell. I think the Gemara says, or the Pasuk says that in Shmuel, he will stomp the ground also. He will make tremendous amount of noises, literally. And I have the Gemara here, but I'm not going to open it because I'm going to try to move a bit faster. And he knew that if a Jew for 40 days does not say Kiryat Shema in the morning and in the evening, now you cut the umbilical cord of connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And the Pelei Yoes, by the way, talks about this number 40. It says if a person wants to develop a new habit, or if a person wants to start removing a negative habit, you need to have a 40-day training. In other words, 40 days. Every day you wake up in the morning. Every day you wake up on time. Every day you don't get angry. Now the teva, the hergel, naasa teva. It becomes your nature. What's the magic of the number 40? The Gemara says it takes 40 days to develop a fetus in the mother's womb. That's why the Talmud says during the first 40 days of pregnancy, you can pray for the gender of the fetus. After the 40 days, you cannot pray for the gender because the gender has been already developed. Then you pray for health, happiness, and joy, etc. So then, I'm sure someone would like to ask the question, and why was Goliath given 40 days to utter a blasphemy to God? If we already saw back in the Perashah of the Megadef, I think Perashat Be'alotecha, that the day that this fellow, born from the Egyptian and the Jew in Egypt, was executed in a day or the day after, how come Goliath was allowed to live for 40 days cursing God? The short answer, the Talmud writes in Gemara Pesachim, En HaKadosh Baruch Hu mefakech sechar kol beria uberia. God does not live on paid invoices. What does that mean? Pashut, if a person does something good, God says, I owe you. Even you can be called Haman, you can be called Paro, or even you can be called Goliath. What was the merit of Goliath living 40 days, so to speak? Short answer, Hazaku Baruch. You're a good listener. The 40 steps that Orpah escorted Naomi, her mother-in-law, God says, you walk 40 steps. Halachically, you're not obligated to walk 40 steps. Halachically, if you walk 4 amot, 6 feet, 4 steps, you fulfill the mitzvah of escorting someone. And this is something that you should do. People come to your home, when they leave, walk with them, or you or your father, somebody, if you do the mitzvah, is fine, and you walk 4 steps, 6 feet, you fulfill the mitzvah of levaya. Because she went the extra mile with Naomi, her son Goliath was given this zechut. But now if you think, not zechut, the bonus and the ability of being alive for 40 days. Why? To give the zechut to David HaMelech. Because David wasn't really the king officially yet. Unofficially, he may have been. In paper, he was not yet. And that's what the famous miracle that happened was that when David offered to defeat Goliath, how did David come to fight Goliath? As a shepherd. So when Shaul sees that David was a young fellow and medium height and medium build and he's dressed like a shepherd, what does Shaul says to David? Take my armor, correct? But Shaul, for you to know, was the tallest of Am Israel. The pasuk says in the beginning of Shmuel, Mishichmo ba'ma'la. Yani the tallest Jew barely reached the shoulders of Shaul. So Shaul was like maybe 7 feet tall, give or take, even a bit more, who knows? So imagine if you are, let's say, 7 feet tall, tefillin needs to be, the halacha says clearly, strategically located. It has to be within the eyes, between the eyes, ultotafot ben einecha, and it has to be on top of the brain. And the reason why we put the tefillin here is because this is the highest part of the human body. There is nothing higher than the location of the brain of the person. So I want to make sure that my brain gets influenced by the mitzvah of tefillin, by the kedusha of tefillin. Also, I put my tefillin where? Wrapping my hand, my arm. Now, why the tefillin wraps the hand and the arm of the person? Because tefillin represents, the arm of the person represents what? Koach, your actions, your deeds. So now, I have holiness coming into my brain. That's great. I have holiness coming into my actions. So the actions that I do connects me with a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And then the tefillin of the hand must point to the heart. So you are sending a wireless message like Wi-Fi. Do you see the Wi-Fi? No. Do you touch Wi-Fi? No, exactly. And you know that it's in the air because your smartphone will pick up the wave. And sometimes you see if you have 5 bars, right? Or you have no bar of the Wi-Fi connection, right? So when the tefillin is properly placed, you are sending a Wi-Fi message to your heart. So guess what? Now that I have my heart influenced with tefillin, my actions are proper, and my thought, my brain, my mahashava is connected to godliness. Guess what? I'm in the right track. Because we need to know, Rabotai, there are arguments, right? People argue, right? You know that there is an invisible argument that happens constantly in our life. This is the argument between the brain and the heart. The brain and the heart, the moach and the lev, they are not always seeing eye to eye. How close is the distance between the brain and the heart? How many inches? Give me a number.
Probably 2 feet.
1.5 feet to 2 feet max. Depends on your heart, on your eye. Okay? But you know what could be the difference between the heart and the brain? Like the difference between Shamayim va'aretz. Like the difference between the heaven and the earth. And this is one of the powerful messages of the parasha of today. Now, the ladies are listening to this class, and they say, Rabbi, you talk about a lot the Shema, you talk about a lot the Tefillin, you talk about a lot of war, but what about something for us? Okay, so I think that is important to say something as well. Definitely, ladies should say Shema every day. And Baruch Hashem, we say Shema. We say Shema in the morning, in the evening, before we go to sleep, in the korbanot, etc. Now, one more message. We know that the parasha of today teaches us the power of Tefilah, how a person needs to pray for things. And we learned it from Moshe Rabbeinu. You remember how many tefillot Moshe Rabbeinu did to be allowed to come into Eretz Israel? How many? 515 prayers with one request. Hashem, give me the opportunity to go to the land of Israel. I ask you a question. What was the reason Moshe Rabbeinu needed to go to the land of Israel? What, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to eat a falafel in Israel? Or shawarma? I know you like shawarma. Okay? To fulfill the mitzvot connected to Eretz Israel. But what Borei Olam says, Rav Lach al Tosef, daber elai od, but davar hazeh. Borei Olam says to Moshe Rabbeinu, thank you, but no thank you. What was the reaction of Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu accepted the decree of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I saw earlier in the Hawk that it says that when a person prays, don't throw in the towel when you pray and you don't see that Hashem is answering the person. Sometimes the answer is no. Not all the time the answer is yes. But it says a fascinating message as well, and it says, don't just pray for what you need. Pray before you need. The Gemara says, Le'olam, Heve Adam Makdim, Refu'a Lamaka. In English it means, always Borei Olam provides the healing before the headache. The Gemara also says, Heve Makdim Tefilah. Advance the prayer. What does it mean, advance the prayer? Don't wait till Haz v'Shalom a problem is knocking on your door, but be proactive. In other words, don't pray to have refuah shelema only when you need it. Pray for refuah that you should never need to have refuah. Or pray for aslaha with the children, not when the headache is knocking on the door. Pray in advance. And once the person prays in advance, it's like you have a savings account of Tefilah. Because Tefilah also has an overdraft system. Overdraft means that if, God forbid, a person may not have enough zechuyot, Borei Olam says, before we activate judgment, let's see if he has overdraft protection. Do you know what overdraft protection is? To the young audience, I'll give you a crash course in finances. Let's say that you wrote a check from your checking account. What happens if there is no money in the account? The check bounces. But if you have overdraft protection, the check doesn't bounce. What does it mean, overdraft protection? There are many ways, but two simple ways is you link to the checking account a savings account. So when the account is about to be overdrawn, so the bank automatically transfer money from the savings account into the checking account, so the check doesn't bounce. It's not good to bounce checks. You should never bounce a check in your life. But some people don't have good accounting or good account reconciliation, and sometimes they write checks. Or you connect a credit card, so if there is an event that they need money, they will borrow from the credit card to cover the check. But you need to know this. It is not a free service. They charge you a service fee from the savings account, and the money that they gave you is cash advance. And in the loss of credit card, if you make a purchase, there is a certain APR. I'm giving you too much information. You're happy with this? If you use it to buy an item, let's say, sometimes it's 0 APR or a very low interest rate, but if you do cash advance, for every day that you don't pay, is the highest interest. You understand? So what Borei Olam does, before activating judgment, says, let's look if this person has an overdraft protection in Shamayim. So your next question will be, how do I deposit zechuyot in the overdraft account? So I'll give you a secret, two of them. Number one, praying. Praying and tehillim. Praying and tehillim. Even when you don't have the need, you pray, that tefilah goes into a special account. But you know what else is the qualification criteria to have an overdraft protection? Learning Torah with a habruta. When two people sit down and learn together, the pasuk says, "Az nidberu irei Hashem ish el re'ehu, vayakshev Hashem vayishma, vayikatev besefer hazichronot." It says, when two people are learning Torah, God listens. Oh, I love that music. What is this music? two Yehudim learning Torah. God listens by Katev Besefer HaZichronot, and He writes it in the book of memory. Where was in the Tanakh mentioned, besides this pasuk, Sefer HaZichronot? Chazak u'Baruch, in Megillat Esther. Everybody believes that that night Ahashverosh was not able to sleep, correct? That is the meaning of that verse. You know the deeper meaning of that verse is, Balayla hahu nadeda shenat hamelech. Borei Olam wasn't able to be calm. How could it be that Bnei Israel, they are about to be destroyed? Destroyed. And what the pasuk says, bring me the book of Zichronot. Bring me the book of memories. Meaning to say, does Am Israel have the zechut to be saved or not? The short answer is yes. There was one Jew that did not bow down to Haman. Remember his name? Mordechai, from the tribe of Binyamin. Correct. Binyamin did not bow down to Esav. Correct. And that's where Mordechai had the power not to bow down to Haman. That was a great-grandchild of Esav, by the way. The way it goes was Esav, Amalek, no, Mechila. Esav, Eliphaz, Amalek, a couple of generations, Agag, and later on, Haman. That's why Mordechai, that was a direct descendant of Shaul, came and finished the mission that his great-grandfather Shaul did not finish. It's all connected.
He also had the shoe.
Huh?
The bottom of the shoe. The letter on the bottom of the shoe.
Yes. Now, interesting enough, this is the Sefer HaZichronot that we talked about, the overdraft. So, pray, read Tehillim, even though that you don't see anything, but miracles happens in the life of the person for this zechut of the extra prayers. There is many more things to say, but I'm going to have mercy upon everybody here present. We like to wish everybody to have a Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. We are going to say Kaddish and Ashkava right after Rabbi Hananiah. Baruch Adonai le'olam, Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia Omer, the Kaddish is right there. By the way, I want you to look at the Kaddish. Let's read the first words. Id Gaddal ve'id Kaddash Shemeh Rabbah. Don't answer Amen. Yod Vav 16. Shin Resh 500. 516. According to the deep books, this was the prayer that Moshe Rabbeinu said after Borei Olam says, Rav Lach al Tosef. 516, the Kaddish. I can't talk anymore because I'm going to be revealing a lot of secrets, and I don't think it's the time at this moment. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen. Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach to everybody. So by the way, before I start the recording, being Shabbat Tu B'Av, as I said yesterday,